Good evening. This is the Group 6 of Technical English, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., which research the perspectives of college students regarding the effectiveness of online learning. As a background, this study was made in light of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, which made the schools opt for such a way of learning to continue this school year. The study wants to focus on three problems, namely what is online learning, how does it affect the students, and what are their perceptions regarding this kind of learning. For the discussion of the study scope, and most importantly, the study's objectives and importance, here is Miss Eliza Arcila. Miss Eliza Arcila, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Erebal. For the study scope, books, journals, and other articles were used in gathering data for the study, as the researchers were unavailable to survey the students as per memorandum. The objectives of the study are to determine not only the perception of students, but also to determine what went right and what went wrong during the first semester of online classes. Connected to this objective is the study's significance, as this study could serve as guidelines as to what to do and what not to do in facilitating online classes as part of improving the systems for conducting such kinds of classes. The methods of how the researchers had led up to the data will now be discussed by Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Arcila. To start with, this study focused more on gathering data from books, journals, articles, and online sources. As for now, these are the only ways that the researchers could formulate their findings. The articles used were descriptive in nature and used the qualitative approach in gathering their data. As such, the way that they gather their data is through online surveys. And one of the examples here was made by Baticolon and Reyes this 2020, which focused on medical students around the first and fourth year in gathering what is their barriers or the certain barriers that they have in participating in online activities to facilitate online learning. To discuss the results of the study, here is Miss Esteban and Miss Jaisel for the results. Miss Jaisel and Miss Esteban, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Rabago. To start, we will discuss the answer for the first problem, which is what is online learning. Most published materials point out to the same definition, a set of activities done online for one to enable to learn a new topic. However, as to how it affects students, the sources differ. As per Baticon and Reyes to 2020, online learners has had a harder time absorbing the lesson due to different barriers as shown here, which in turn had made their lesson retention worse should they have an environment that does not foster online learning at all.
On the other hand, some studies evolve due to the fact that the learners are able to maximize their time could learn lessons at their pace. As to how the students perceive such a kind of learning, it differs also. Some studies consider it as a better way of learning, but also some consider it as worse. It depends on the factors as discussed by Condria and Hakim 2015, such as their access to the internet and to the available gadgets at their disposal and other factors that may affect learners when partaking in such kind of learning. To discuss the conclusion of the group, here is Mr. Joram for the discussion of the results.
So for the discussion, online classes is new to us, both for the students and the teachers, and it is an undeniable fact that we face difficulties in its implementation without being fully ready. Truly change can cause stress and anxiety in this time of pandemic. Here's Mr. Pontejos.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. To sum it up, learning through the means of the internet could be a true one or a better option depending on the student. Studies and publication are divided as a conclude if this is a better option of learning or not. This depends on what gadgets a student has and how accessible is the internet for him or her. As such, the perception of the students could be negative if they have poor access to internet or have not much have gadget at their disposal, and better if otherwise. Therefore, the researcher conclude that the perspective could depend on who one asks. It could be negative or positive depending on the aforementioned circumstances. Thank you for listening.